Issue 1 of Finite explores two catastrophes, both related to fresh water: the collapse of Lake Chad and inadequate access to drinking water in Cameroon, one of the 4 countries that borders Lake Chad. Before its collapse, Lake Chad was larger by surface area than 2 North American Great Lakes, Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. By surface area, Lake Chad was once the 11th largest lake in the world. According to the United Nations, quote, "The lake's size has decreased by 90%, and the surface area of the lake has plummeted from 26,000 square kilometers in 1963 to less than 1,500 square kilometers today. In the 1960s, the lake hosted about 135 species of fish, and fishermen captured 200,000 metric tons of fish every year, providing an important source of food security and income to the basin's populace and beyond. It was full of inhabited islands, each with its own culture. According to BirdLife International, Lake Chad is one of the most important places in the world for migratory birds, as over 70 species rely on Lake Chad as a stop in their migration. Before its collapse, Lake Chad covered approximately the same area as the states of Vermont or Maryland. Now it is comparable in size to any of Maryland's 23 counties, or the city of Los Angeles. Meanwhile, the UN estimates that only 49% of Cameroonians have access to drinking water when they need it, and only 35% have access in their homes. Yet even that drinking water is often contaminated. Blood is already being spilled in Cameroon over water scarcity. Says a recent news report, quote, "Cameroonian officials say hundreds of people have fled its northern border with Chad after an ongoing conflict over water between cattle ranchers and fishermen killed 18 people and wounded 70. So, a massive freshwater lake collapses, losing 90% of its volume. And in one of the countries bordering Lake Chad, Cameroon, just under half the population has reliable access to drinking water. It certainly seems like these problems are related. If a major body of fresh water has nearly disappeared, then certainly the people nearby could run out of water to drink, and climate change could be the cause of it all. Yet climate change can't be responsible. Lake Chad started collapsing in the 1960s, decades before there was enough greenhouse gas in the atmosphere to have caused it. And the number of Cameroonians in a given year lacking access to drinking water bears no relationship to Lake Chad's volume. Violence, collapsing ecosystems, lack of drinking water. In Cameroon and Lake Chad, all of our worst fears of climate change are already happening. But climate change is not responsible. What's going on? What if we're thinking about climate change all wrong? What if climate change isn't the biggest threat to the planet, but rather an especially large symptom of a more fundamental problem? The other source of humanity's greenhouse gas emissions. Though climate change is not responsible for the collapse of Lake Chad, these crises are nonetheless related. In fact, the opposite is closer to the truth. The crisis driving Lake Chad is also a major contributor to climate change. As we will learn in Chapter 1, land degradation is the fundamental cause of the collapse of Lake Chad. Land degradation is also a massive crisis throughout the entire Sahel. That's the large strip of Africa running east-west from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean, sandwiched between the Sahara Desert to the north and Africa's tropical rainforests to the south. This crisis is occurring not just in Cameroon and not just among the Lake Chad countries, but across the entire Sahel. According to the latest data, a quarter of all of humanity's greenhouse gas emissions come from land degradation. Earth's soils are estimated to hold 2,500 billion tons of carbon, or more than 3 times as much carbon as is held in the atmosphere. When land is degraded, the carbon that had been contained in the soil is released into the atmosphere, where it acts as a greenhouse gas. In this way, land degradation is no different than a coal power plant. Once in the atmosphere, carbon acts as a greenhouse gas no matter its origin. In other words, the basic cause of the collapse of Lake Chad is also contributing in a massive way to climate change. Thus, even though we may not want to care about some lake half a world away, we must. We all share one atmosphere, and unless we get a handle on the hot spots of land degradation, we won't be able to stop climate change.